Hi, welcome back to Epilepsy Moms. My name is Summer, and my son has generalized epilepsy with tonic-clonic and absence seizures.
Hi, my name is Liz, and my daughter has focal epilepsy in her temporal lobe.
Hi, my name is Bree, and I am an early childhood education teacher.
So I kind of want to get into more specific situations and like how we can daily use conscious discipline, which I know we've talked about a few situations, but talking specifically about epilepsy or any situation where a child is taking medications, I know that can be really, really difficult. It can be really hard with young kids and older kids. I've heard stories of older kids with epilepsy who are like, that's it, I'm done. I'm not taking these anymore. Like, I just want to quit. And then they rebel and they won't take them. And then they're having seizures and all the time. And then younger kids who are like, tastes so bad. It's so hard to swallow. This is miserable. So what are some ways we can use conscious discipline to help encourage them to take those medications?
I think the biggest, not, I wouldn't say selling point, but like the most important part of their medication is their safety, right? Because they helps them stay safe from their seizures. Like, I know obviously, like when you're having a seizure, you can fall off a bed, or you know what I mean? Like things that contribute to their safety. So I would revert it always back to the safety. Like, you need to take these because of your safety, and like explaining to them like why this medication, like, okay, and even like, I think that sorry, I'm like talking all over, but even if you know and the doctor informs you of like different things that they might experience, informing them like, hey, this is normal, this medication unfortunately it might do this, but and like just kind of make them aware of like the things that might happen while being on that medication, so it's not such a surprise to them, and they're not like, oh my gosh, I hate this awful thing because it does this to me and I didn't expect this to happen. And then also what I would do, and like what I do in my classroom too, if a parent informs me that a child has started a new medication and they might display different behaviors or wants me to keep an eye on them or whatever, I have like a log of like behavior sheets. And so it's like called an ABC form, and it's like an antecedent, a behavior, and the consequence. So what happened right before the behavior was caused? This child got their toy taken away, so they threw something else, you know what I mean? Retaliation to that other child. The consequence was the item that they threw hit somebody else in the head or whatever. But like really trying to see what's causing those behaviors, because it could be transition time. It could be like they're getting to that point where they're getting hungry or they're tired, and it could just be like exasperated because of their medication that they're on, where it might not be a normal behavior any other day. There are like tons of different like behavior resources online to like, I'm like really not a worksheet type of person, but I like things that are laid out easy and like really fill in the blank. So there's like boxes that say A, B, C, and you literally just fill them in, write the child's name, the time, and things like that. And then you're able to collect data and then go back through that data on the days, the times, like, okay, this child, like the biggest examples that I have with medication is ADHD. So the medication starts wearing off at this time. That's when we need a second dose, because if we don't get a second dose by this time, this child's not going to fall asleep for nap, and they're going to throw toys out there. It's going to cause a huge explosion in that child's day, because it's not what their body is used to. They're used to having this much medication in their system or whatever it is. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of experience with children with epilepsy in my class and implementing conscious discipline, but I feel like for the behavior wise, finding behavior sheets that work well for you and like what you are comfortable filling out, and like going back and like really going back to see what is happening and like what behaviors are happening, because it could be like something that happens one time, and I wouldn't necessarily call that like a behavior. Yes, it was a behavior that occurred, but it's not an ongoing disruptive behavior. It happened one time, where once it starts happening over and over and you're like, okay, this behavior has got to stop. And it's probably from the medication that we just started. Let's start logging when these behaviors occur. Are they before bed? Are they right after we take the medication? Are they whatever, and just like trying to find the root of where this behavior is happening, and not trying to prevent it, but at least being aware. And then like,
Well, you're expecting it. You're ready
yes,
for it when it's going to
exactly.
happen.
Yeah, and then like, and you could try and find different things to extinguish the behavior by providing them with other appropriate behaviors if they are appropriate, you know, because
Sure.
that's not always true. Like not wanting to brush your teeth, you know what I mean? Like there's not really a solution. We have to brush our teeth. We're gonna have cavities. Our teeth fall out, you know. Um,
I've
but I feel like that.
I was just gonna say, so I've used the ABC method that you're
Mhm.
talking about, and it really is helpful in, I mean, it seems so simple, and I know
Mhm.
sometimes people think, oh, well, I can just record that in my brain and figure it out, or I know what the cause is
Yeah.
already. But really, when you write
Mhm.
it down, it makes such a difference. And going back and looking at that, I mean, maybe
And the
your
patterns.
child doesn't want to take their medication because of the time of the
Mhm.
day. Maybe that's the time when
Yeah.
they're, siblings are going to play and they want to go with them, or neighbor
Mhm.
kids are calling and they want to do that video game or whatever it is. And so if you figure that out, you might be able to find that maybe a time change in your schedule will make them more open to taking the pills at certain
Yeah,
times.
and maybe also like what I was talking about earlier with the visual schedules, maybe like implementing that and putting it into your visual schedule of like, okay, right before breakfast or at breakfast, I don't know if you have to take them with food, but this is when we take our medicine, and you can take it before you eat or after you eat, but before you leave the table, we have to take our medication so that we are safe all day or something like that. Really like, I don't know. I feel like
Right.
the routine is, but also you might need to change routine with behavior display, you know. Um, I'm sure it's like a lot of trial and error with medications too. And I feel like that's the same with like trying to not fix behaviors, but
Yeah.
in a sense, yeah, like
Modify them.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like you're
help
saying,
them.
going kind of like brainstorming and going back to the drawing board and figuring out, like, is there
Mhm.
something I can do that will work? Like with the toothbrushing,
Yeah.
like, okay, here's some ideas. Let's think about how we can change this situation. And
Yeah.
so with pills, I mean, medications, it's like, well, what other food do they like? Do they like their medication in yogurt? Do they like it
Mhm.
in this thing or that thing? Or does pill form work better? Sprinkles work better for my son than swallowing? Like, yeah, finding out what's going to work for your child can really help. It's still really hard. Well, so I guess that kind of leads me to another question of, so in my family, we do a lot of like talking and discussing things. And it's great because we do have like a connection, but then also there are those times when it's like, no, you have to do this. Like, it doesn't matter if you don't want to, you have to take this medication. Like, at the end of the day, it has to happen. So what's a good way to deal with that? Because I know sometimes I'll get a lot of like, what? No, like, you're going to really make me do that? And it's like,
Mhm.
at some point, the parents do have to stand up for some things.
Yeah.
And sometimes your kids don't like that.
Yeah, yeah. And so sometimes too, like I, even in the classroom, when kids are like, I don't want to do that, like I don't want to nap. And I'm like, it's really tough. And it's okay that you feel that way and you don't want to do these things. Miss Bree has things that I don't want to do either, but we have to do them. And this is something you might not want to do, but it's something you have to do. Now you can do it before this. And like, that's when you can kind of play with different things. But I don't think there's anything wrong with telling them they have to, especially when it comes to medication. Like that is, it really is their safety and their like, if you stop a medication, it doesn't start over. You know what I mean? Like if they miss a few days, it might exit their body and then they might have to readjust to it. And I don't know how the science behind that or how any of that works, but I'm sure that it happens.
Mhm.
And it really is a you have to take it. But I would just try and find like fun ways or different things that work for your family. But like I was saying, like there are things that I don't like to do or I don't want to do, but I have to do them. And this is something that you have to do. And that's sometimes I even say like, oh, I can do it with you. Like they don't want to wash their hands. We have to wash our hands before we eat. That's gross. We were just playing outside, like, and so I'll go in and wash my hands with them. This is a very different circumstance because it's not like you could take the medication with them. Um, but if you take any sort of medications, you could take it at the same time. Hey, we get to take our medicines together at the same time. Ready? You get your glass, I
Vitamins.
got mine. let's do it, whatever you're doing. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I got to take my medicine with my mom this morning. That was so cool. Depending on the age, obviously, a high schooler might not think that's very cool.
Or with my daughter, she has a hard time with this new medication because of how it makes her feel when she wakes up. So she gets very dizzy and has more of a side effect of the medication. But we ended up giving it to her an hour or 2 hours early before the rest of her medication. And that seemed to work great because she sleeps through that time of her being dizzy. So
yeah.
a lot, maybe sometimes it's even something that they are just feeling, that they don't like the feeling of, so switch up the medication time that you're giving it to them, like maybe you can, sometimes I know with some medications you can give half doses within an hour or 2 hours or something. You have to talk to your doctor about that kind of stuff, but maybe like certain amount of like kind of splitting it up in a sense.
And that's a great thing to ask your doctor about. I mean, it's always good to explore options like that. If you're taking a medication and they don't like the side effect, and I think really a great thing, because my son's older, is when we go to an appointment and he can hear what the doctor says. So it's not just me saying it, like he hears the doctor and he's like, oh, okay. Like this isn't just mom making these random rules and saying I have to do this. Like this is my doctor with a degree saying
my health,
yeah,
my safety.
And another thing for your son that might help too is like, okay, now do you have any questions that you'd like to ask the doctor about this medication? And like that, giving them that power.
It's a choice.
Is like, hey, wow, I get to ask them questions. Okay, how's this going to make me feel?
Yeah.
And like, that's another thing too, is like, and now your son's older, right?
Yeah, he's 14, almost 15.
Okay. But like with your daughter, she might not be able to vocalize or like express how the medication is making her feel. Like she might not know, she might confuse it with, oh, my tummy hurts, I'm sick today, where it's like, that's going to be kind of hard because you can't be sick every time you take your medication. And that's something that you could document and then, okay, yep, this is the medicine. So now we need to understand every morning your tummy might feel a little bit funny, but you just need to tell mom, this is what we can do. Remember, it's just because of your medicine, you're not sick. And like, so that they are understanding and really knowing what it's doing to their body and like how it's helping and the side effects that are happening. And then like giving them that power of like asking the doctor, since he is older and like able to understand what the doctor's saying and like knowing that he might not want to take his medicine, he could ask different questions to help ease his mind, I feel like, of like, okay, now like I got a little bit more of an understanding, my questions are answered, I'm not just asking my mom, I asked the doctor.
And even having them ask, I mean, if they want to quit their medications, well, then we have an appointment coming up, ask your doctor what will happen if you make that choice, like so that you can know from the authority what's going to happen. Also, so going along with that, like one of the big battles that we have in my house is, so when my son was, before we found out he had epilepsy and he was getting medication, he was exhausted, sleeping all the time, so hard to wake up. Now he's on medication and he's so exhausted and tired because he's on this medication.
And you can't get him out of bed.
I can't get him up for school. So is there any...
She will call me and be like, he's not waking up.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
So many things.
Do you like, is he missing school because of this, or is he like super late to school, or are there any like when he gets to school
he's been late a couple times. Most of the time I can get him up, but he only has 5 minutes to he'll get up like 5 minutes before he has to leave the house. And then it's like, well, he'll go without brushing his teeth. He'll go without brushing his hair. He'll leave without his belt and his pants are falling down, just because he doesn't have time.
Yeah.
He'll eat his breakfast in the car because he's like, I don't have time to eat at home. And it's like, we're like physically sometimes like pulling him out of bed. Like you just have to get up. And
oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's a battle. It's a big
So like with that, it's the medication that's making him tired. Is that what you said?
Yeah. If he's on the medication, it's the medication. When he's not on medication, it's the seizures. So either way, he's exhausted.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That is, and like, does your doctor say anything about him being so tired? Or that's just a side effect, huh?
It's just a side effect. They are, and that's one of the things we're going to talk to our doctor at our next appointment is, can we change his medicine up? Can we do like a slow release or a fast release of this medication? And maybe that would help. But in the meantime, we still have weeks of school before we can get in.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
And so everything that I've ever been taught is like, if a child needs sleep, let them sleep. Like, that's the hard part where I'm at, where I'm like, oh, I'm actually not allowed. If a child's taking a 5.5 hour nap in my class, I can't actually wake them up. I sure can like slam books and like be super loud, and I'm like, you got
Maybe that's what you need to do
tonight.
Start making it like, start vacuuming next to his head and like,
yeah, like
that's a good one.
that is, well, I was thinking when you first started talking about it, and so that was your 14-year-old son, I was thinking about this. I remember when I was in high school, or maybe when I was in college, and I saw these alarm clocks, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I was such a light sleeper, and I woke up right when my dad opened the door and was like, all right, Bree, it's time to wake up. Those alarm clocks that start ticking and then roll around your room, so you have to chase them. That would be awful, but I feel like that might help your case. But also, you might just let it happen.
Yeah, no, we've tried the most annoying loud alarm clocks. They wake everyone else in the house up, but not him.
Except him.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Very counterproductive.
Yeah.
start dumping water on his head.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I know.
Wow.
That I've heard that a lot. Like, we'll just pour water on it, but it's like I don't want to be mean.
Like,
Like,
I know. I was gonna say, but it's like also not his fault that he's sleeping so late because the medicine.
Yeah. It's not.
So that's hard.
Does it make him go to bed early? And like, is he? I mean, obviously he's getting enough sleep, but like, what if he went to bed earlier?
Then he just won't sleep. I mean, he would lay there, but not be able to fall asleep. Because then, it's hard to fall asleep than it is to wake up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he would just sit there and not, he'll be annoyed that he's not.
So I have this app on my phone that has actually, because I used to have really bad sleep, like going to sleep. It was very hard unless I had the TV on or something, like, because I needed more of the sound. But like fans don't really work, and unless I'm like dead tired. So I actually just recently got this app called Calm, and it's on my phone, and it has the most soothing authors or people telling like bedtime stories, or there's even music, or they have nature sounds, or there's lots of different things, and it only goes until you fall asleep. So it only stays on your, like, it starts like the stories are only like 30 to 50 minutes, or whatever. And so it's like, but half time I end up falling asleep like not even 5 minutes in sometimes, because it's just like, and it actually says, before we start this, story, I want you to take 5 deep breaths, like
that's neat.
It has just very calming, like zoning kind of tone to their voices. And I know that one of them, Harry Connick Jr. was one of the voices, and Matthew McConaughey was one of them. Like, they have just more of like those, not all of them are, famous people, but like they have really soothing voices.
That's a good idea. Yeah, I might try that. Yeah.
I love it. It's actually, I think it's like $50 a year, but it's unlimited. You can, I mean, it's kind of like, not Amazon,
Spotify or something.
Yeah, Spotify or Pandora. Okay. It's like there's a subscription if you don't want all the commercials and stuff like that. But so, I mean, it's really actually, it's worth it for me. I use it almost every night.
Now that I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking, gosh, maybe I should do the ABC method and see. I can write down like what method is working the best. Like we tried this to get him up. Did it work? How well did it work? How long did it take for him to wake up? And maybe if I did that for a couple of weeks, I could see what is waking up the easiest.
And like when he's getting to school, he's in middle school or high school?
High school.
Regardless, they have periods, right? Like he's not in the same class all day.
Yeah, right? And actually he kind of sleeps through the first period. And then he has a break period.
I was going to say.
He takes a nap. So after his first class. Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say, because I wonder if it would be like next year worth mentioning to the school,
Right.
hey, can he start a period later? Because this medication, he's not getting to the first period. Now, it's not his fault. It's not my fault as the parent. It's the medication that
Right.
it's the side effect of this medication. So what can we do? And the school, like,
Yeah, I'm sure
they
they would
might
do that. I think
not work
that's a great idea.
well with you, but like they're gonna have to regardless, whether you get a doctor's note saying, hey, this child needs to start after this period, or like they're willing to work with you and be kind about it. But I know that's not always the case.
Yeah.
Um,
That's a good idea.
but I feel like that might be worth mentioning too after like doing these ABC things. If it's really not working and nothing is happening and he is like sleeping like a rock with this medication, then that's worth mentioning and being like, hey,
Yeah.
I don't want my kid to miss out on this period or the education aspect or fall behind or whatever. But he clearly needs to sleep. He's sleeping regardless whether he's here or not, you
Right.
know?
And that
So,
first period class he doesn't do well in because he's so sleepy in it. It's like he's not really
yeah,
taking much in. So yeah,
yeah.
that is a good idea. I might do that next year. So yeah,
Well, and it also depends on if he's going to be on that medication next year too.
that's
Mhm.
true.
That's true.
Yeah.
You know, if you end up going to the doctor and he gets off the Depakote, maybe a new medication
Or
is needing to,
yeah, gets in a different way. Yeah.
right. Or yeah, but like either way, like whatever it is, maybe it just needs to happen so that he can stay awake, like,
Mhm.
or maybe he can take, half the Depakote and, add, let's say, zanisamide or something, and then only take Depakote at night. You know what I mean? Or like figure out what the release is and figure out when you need to modify it. Like obviously the doctor's
Yeah.
gonna
But
know
it's a
that.
good thing
But
to talk about with your doctor. And yeah, I think it's good. It's good for
yeah,
you parents out there to know, like, you can do that. You can talk to your doctor and
yeah,
Mhm.
try and figure something out. And yeah, I think it's a great idea to ask the school if he can just have that like 0 period or something. I think they called it when I was a
Yeah.
kid. There's like, you don't have a class, so why don't we just
Mhm.
make that your first class and you can
Yeah.
come a little bit later. What about, is there a way to use conscious discipline to help kids who are anxious or worried?
So I was literally just looking at that question too. I the first thing that comes to my brain is again those picture schedules. Like what are they going to like in my brain too is like going to elementary school. So like talking about specials and things like that. Like, hey, today's Wednesday. You get to go to PE today and like, look, I know this because the soccer ball's on Wednesday. It's time for PE or whatever. And like if there's something different that day, like just showing them what to expect. But also I feel like it's hard because the anxiety could come from like having a poor experience at school or just being like anxious to leave the house. You know what I mean? Especially with COVID. Like I feel like anxiety and things like it is
Yeah.
going to only get worse. So we need to find solutions and find strategies and tools to help these children because the same thing like my little sister has really bad anxiety going to school now too and she's in high school and she is struggling. She's been to like 4 different high schools just in her it's only 4 years of high school, you know, so it's really hard for kids that are anxious to go to school to wake up and go there. But I think that also like informing them and like just like you're like talking up their day like hey you get to do this at school or like I think just like trying to be as positive as you can as the parent and like how are you feeling, like why do you think you're feeling that way, why don't you want to go to school, and trying to get to what is making them anxious, like why don't they want to go to school unless you
Right.
already know, and then maybe also communicating that with the teacher like hey, and maybe just the first period teacher because they're or whatever period they're going to school in or whatever time hey they're really anxious about going to school, these are some things I'm doing at home, this is what I'm saying, like what are things that you can help my child feel less anxious, because honestly like I feel like that is like teachers' jobs. You know what I mean? Like, and that's how I feel as a teacher. Like, if a child feels unsafe or I'm not able to calm them down after a drop off, like, why are they feeling that way? Why don't they want to be in my classroom?
Right.
Why do they not feel safe here? You know what I mean? And that might not always be it. You know, they could just be missing mom. But I fully believe that like when the parents leave, I am their person. You know what I mean? Like, and if I am not someone who can soothe them or help calm them down, then I might not have a very good connection with that child, or I'm not doing my job the best that I could be. And that's just how I see it for myself. Um, but I feel like also routine and like making the same time waking up every day, doing the same thing first, and like, hey, first we do this, then we get in the car and we go to school, or you get to the bus stop or whatever. There's also like a lot of books. And again, these are more like for the littles that I have, but I have like a lot of books about being nervous or anxious, like Lena's Nervous Shoes. And they're like, this little girl is really nervous to go to school, really anxious, and she's blaming it on her shoes. Like her shoes are too nervous. She doesn't want to put her shoes on because they're not friends with her headband, and like different things. It's really cute, but I always read it to my pre-K class before they go to kindergarten. And same with like Busy Bus, because I know that they're gonna have these overwhelming and anxious feelings, and it's something brand new to them, you know, like some of these kids have never been on a bus. And so I try to like get them exposed to it in a way by like it reading relatable stories of like anxiousness and having anxiety and things like that. So maybe like finding a book that he could relate to, that's like a child that has anxiety going to school or something, that he could read, but one that's not like cheesy, you know what I mean? Like something that would actually be engaging.
Right.
And that might be hard to find, honestly, but yeah. And along with books, I just like had a thought about when we were talking about behaviors and giving children the power and the power to choose and stuff like that. There are so many good books about the power to choose, and one of my favorite ones is What Should Danny Do? I think it's what it's called, and
Oh
What
yes,
Should
I
Daughter
have that
Do?
book. I
And I
love
love those books because there's 8 different stories in the book, or
it.
I don't know if it's actually 8, but there's a bunch of different stories, and the children choose what happens. So is Danny gonna get ready for school and get shoes on and get ready, or is he gonna dilly dally and miss breakfast or whatever? And then there's like consequences that happen to him throughout the book, and like, oh, okay, let's read the book again and make better choices for Danny. Like, what can we choose instead to make Danny's day different?
Yeah.
And then they can kind of see this is what happens when we make poor choices, and this is what happens when we make the right choice. That way they can see like consequences, but not like having them directly. And like, I don't know, I feel like books do a really good job of teaching, and like obviously, but like we can use them in better ways, like mentor books in how we can teach about these things like
Sure.
anxiety and what to expect and why we're feeling this way, and things that we can do when he's like, you could have a safe place, but that's not ideal if he's anxious to going to school. Let me just sit in the safe place all morning and avoid going to school, you know? So you want it to be like productive. He could use like a fidget spinner or something on the way to school that makes him feel less anxious, or something fidgety. And like, I know that there's like those keychain poppets, which I don't know if any of these things would actually be helpful, but they're things that he could be doing quietly in class or on the way to school, or like on a bus, I'm thinking, if he rides the bus. But they're appropriate things that will keep his mind and his hands
Right.
busy if he's feeling anxious.
Right.
Yeah, those are great ideas. And I think it's true. It's nice to have a book do your teaching instead of you being like, well, look what you're doing. You're doing this and you're thinking this, and why are you,
Yeah. And then they
filling the
don't feel
shoes
as
and doing
much as
that, like
the
it's
problem too.
right. Yeah, they can feel like there's a solution to the problem, that other people deal with this. It's not just
Yeah.
them. So
Mhm.
I like that idea.
Yeah, and I bet there's books like with like kids with epilepsy, like a children's story.
There are.
I was gonna say that would be
So
something
I actually
really cool too, I bet.
thought about buying them, and so I can show them on the video.
Mhm.
So maybe we should do like a segment of like just showing these books, and then we can get maybe some for like parent help books, like here's your, if you have a, kiddo with epilepsy, but I mean, there's one that talks about like kiddos who have seizures and how they feel when they're having it. And like, there is a lot of really, really cool self books for kids on, I think even Amazon had them. So I
And
think I might get
the
them.
ones that we've talked about today, I'll go ahead and link in the description box below, the ones that I can find.
Awesome.
Speaking of books,
Oh,
you can definitely get the
Yes.
Conscious Discipline book. Where would you find this?
I think you could just like literally type in conscious discipline in Google and shop. But I think that I
And they have
don't
a
know.
website, right?
Yeah, I don't know like the exact www dot, but
Sure.
Conscious Discipline has a website and there's resources on there for parents, for teachers.
We'll also link that
Yeah,
in the
mhm.
description.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
there's actually a video. I don't remember what it was. Yeah, there's like tons of different resources. Oh, the video that I linked on this is managing anxiety. So,
Okay. Your story's not over.
Your story's just begun.